The last turn of the key sounded like a gunshot in the empty apartment. Each click of the lock echoed in the hollow space where his daughter's laughter used to be. Liam's hand trembled as he dropped the keys into the landlord's waiting palm, the man's gaze fixed somewhere over his shoulder. He couldn't bear to look at his daughter Maya, who was tracing patterns in the dust on their last cardboard box. "Are we going on an adventure now, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small but bright with a 7-year-old's unshakable faith. Liam's throat tightened. He forced a nod, the lie catching like sawdust in his throat. "The biggest adventure," he whispered, turning away so she wouldn't see the shame burning in his eyes. He had failed her. He had failed the memory of his wife. And as they walked away from the only home Maya had ever known, the adventure felt a lot like drowning.
This is T.S. Simple Serene Stories. Before we get back to this touching story, I have a quick question for you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe that humanity and miracles are eternal, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get back to the story.
Part 1. The weight of silence. The last turn of the key sounded like a gunshot in the empty apartment. Each click of the lock echoed in the hollow space where his daughter's laughter used to be, where the scent of his wife Sarah's cooking once clung to the walls. Now, it smelled only of dust and bleach. Liam's hand, calloused from years of shaping wood, trembled as he dropped the keys into the landlord's waiting palm. Mr. Henderson, a man who had once shared beers with him at a summer barbecue, fixed his gaze somewhere over Liam's shoulder, his expression a careful mask of professional pity. "I'm sorry, Liam. Truly," he mumbled, the words dissolving in the stale air. Liam just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He couldn't look at his daughter, Maya, who sat on the floor tracing patterns in the dust on their last cardboard box. It held a motley collection of their life's essentials, a few changes of clothes, Maya's worn-out teddy bear, and a thick book of fairy tales. "Are we going on an adventure now, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small but bright with a 7-year-old's unshakable faith. The question struck him with the force of a physical blow. He turned, forcing a smile that felt like a grimace. The lie caught like sawdust in his throat. "The biggest adventure," he whispered, his voice cracking on the last word. He busied himself with the box, turning away so she wouldn't see the shame burning in his eyes. He had failed her. In the silent, unforgiving courtroom of his mind, he had failed the memory of Sarah, who had trusted him to keep their daughter safe and happy. As they walked away from the only home Maya had ever known, the great adventure felt a lot like drowning. Their new home was a 15-year-old station wagon with a universe of rust spots on the hood and the lingering scent of old coffee. Liam parked it on a quiet, tree-lined residential street, blocks away from anywhere they knew, hoping they would be invisible. "Welcome to the urban camper," he announced with a flourish of false cheerfulness, gesturing to the back where he had arranged blankets and pillows into a makeshift nest. "First rule of urban camping, we have to be super quiet, like spies." Maya giggled, the sound a fragile spark in the growing dark. For the first hour, it was a glam. She burrowed into the blankets, whispering secrets to her bear, her face illuminated by the intermittent glow of a passing car's headlights. But as the night deepened, the novelty wore off. The shadows cast by the trees grew long and menacing. A dog barked, sharp and sudden, and Maya flinched, her small body pressing against his. "Daddy, I'm scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The noises are loud." Liam wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "That's just the city singing, sweet pea. It's singing you to sleep." He stayed awake long after her breathing evened out, his senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every distant siren, sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. His pride, a stubborn and useless thing, was at war with a primal terror that left a cold pit in his stomach. He was her father. He was supposed to be her shield, her fortress. Instead, he was a man hiding in a metal box, praying the morning would come. The steering wheel dug into his back, a constant, dull ache that was a pale imitation of the one in his heart. The city's main public library became their sanctuary. Its tall, stone facade and the 2 lion statues guarding its entrance promised a quiet dignity they desperately craved. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of old paper and floor polish. It was a place with rules, and rules meant order. For a few hours each day, they weren't homeless. They were simply patrons. A fragile routine began to form. Liam would walk Maya to the children's section, a vibrant oasis of colorful rugs and small chairs. Her initial shyness melted away in the face of so many stories waiting to be discovered. She would lose herself in worlds of talking animals and faraway kingdoms, and for that, Liam was endlessly grateful. He would then retreat to the adult reference section, a cavern of silence and concentration. He'd take a seat at a carrel in the back, the polished wood cool beneath his forearms, and pretend to be a student or a researcher. He spent the first few days scouring job sites on the library's computers, the cursor blinking mockingly on the screen. Carpenter, 15 years experience. The high-end workshop that had gone bankrupt had been his only real reference. He was overqualified for handyman jobs, underqualified for anything that required a college degree. The applications he sent out vanished into a digital void. After a week, he changed his strategy. Instead of looking for work he couldn't get, he started studying his craft. He pulled up architectural digests, downloaded blueprints for complex joinery, and read articles on sustainable building materials. It was a small act of defiance, a way to remind himself of the man he was, a craftsman, a builder, not just the ghost haunting the library's back corner. From his seat, he had a clear view of the main circulation desk, presided over by a woman whose nameplate read Eleanor. She was in her 60s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a posture that radiated authority. She ran her domain with a firm but quiet efficiency. Liam made sure they were perfect guests. They never brought food in. Maya knew to use her library voice. He always reshelved the books he looked at, aligning their spines perfectly. He lived in fear of being noticed, of being seen for what they were, and asked to leave their last safe harbor. Eleanor's gaze would sometimes sweep across the room, and Liam would feel it like a physical touch, ducking his head, making himself smaller, praying she saw nothing more than a father waiting for his daughter. Part 2. The Quiet Hunt. Weeks bled into a month, and the library's quiet embrace began to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a swa. The routine that had once offered comfort now felt like a life sentence. Hope, Liam realized, wasn't a steady flame. It was a sputtering wick, and his was threatening to go out. He'd exhausted every job lead, and the small roll of cash tucked into his sock was dwindling with alarming speed. The shame he felt each morning waking up in the car had solidified into a permanent, dull despair. It was Maya who broke the spell. She had blossomed in the children's section, her initial shyness replaced by a quiet confidence. She knew the librarians by name and had her favorite reading nook by the window. One afternoon, she padded over to Liam's carrel, her face alight with discovery. She clutched a handsome, cloth-bound copy of The Wind in the Willows. "Daddy, look," she whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "Mr. Toad left a note." Tucked just inside the cover wasn't a forgotten, scribbled note, but a thick, cream-colored card, professionally printed with elegant serif font. It felt official, deliberate. Liam read the words aloud, his voice a low murmur in the library's hush. "For those who seek a new riverbank, the journey begins. Where stone lions guard the silent word, let the afternoon sun be your guide. Look for the one who has not stirred, and find the secret he holds inside." Liam's first instinct was weary skepticism. It was a game, a charming but ultimately pointless distraction. But as he looked at Maya's hopeful face, he couldn't bring himself to dismiss it. Arthur was fond of that one. The voice, calm and clear, made Liam jump. Eleanor, the head librarian, stood beside their table, her expression unreadable. "He left a few of them around," she continued, her gaze shifting from the card to Liam. "My late husband, Arthur. He established a trust for families. This was his unique application process." She offered nothing more, simply gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, and walked away, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Liam looked down at the card again. It wasn't a game. It wasn't a forgotten trinket. It was an invitation. A fragile, calculated hope began to push back against the despair. It wasn't magic. It was a process. And for the first time in a long time, Liam felt a flicker of agency. The hunt was not a frantic chase, but a slow, contemplative unfolding. It demanded patience and observation, skills Liam possessed in spades from his years of carpentry. The first clue led them, obviously, to the two magnificent stone lions flanking the library's entrance. For an entire afternoon, they watched the sun crawl across the sky. As the light softened, the shadow of the western lion stretched out, its dark form creeping over the base of the eastern one. "The one who has not stirred," Maya whispered excitedly, pointing at the stone lion, not its shadow. They examined the statue base, their fingers tracing the cool, weathered stone. There was no loose rock, no hidden compartment. There was only the mason's mark, a small, chiseled M inside a circle, and beneath it, a year. 1895. "That's it?" Maya asked. Her face clouded with confusion. "I think so," Liam said, a new kind of excitement building in him. This was a puzzle of a different sort. The next day was spent in the library's archives, a hushed, climate-controlled room that smelled of history. Liam taught Maya how to handle the delicate, brittle pages of old city registers and how to load spools of microfiche onto the reader. It felt good to be teaching her something tangible, something real. After hours of searching, they found it. A grainy newspaper article from October 1895, detailing the dedication of the new City Hall clock tower. The reporter, with journalistic flourish, had noted the magnificent bell's weight, 4,816 pounds. "That's our next clue," Liam said, the number feeling like a key in his mind. Their progress came to a grinding halt at the clock tower. The grand old building was shrouded in a web of scaffolding and green mesh, a sign for a restoration project posted out front. They couldn't get close. "It's broken," Maya said, her lip trembling. The setback was a physical blow, and she looked up at him with eyes full of disappointment. Liam felt that old, familiar sting of failure. Of course, the one path that had opened for them was now blocked. It was a sign, he thought, a cruel joke. He was about to suggest they give up, to retreat back to the familiar misery of their routine, but the sight of Maya's crestfallen face stopped him. No, he would not be beaten by scaffolding. He spent the rest of the day sitting on a bench across the square, just watching. He was a carpenter. He understood structure, weight, and dimension. He studied the visible portions of the bell through the mesh, estimating its diameter, its flare. That evening, back in the library, he didn't look for jobs. He pulled out books on campanology and metallurgy, books on the history of bell casting. With a library pencil and a sheet of scrap paper, he sketched, calculated, and cross-referenced. It was a long shot, an educated guess based on craft and historical precedent. Finally, he arrived at a number. It wasn't 4,216, but it was a number that felt right, a number derived from his own skill. The next morning, with a tremor of nervous energy, Liam walked directly to the main circulation desk. Maya trailed behind him, clutching his hand. This was the biggest step yet, a direct confrontation with the pride that had kept him isolated. "Eleanor," he began, his voice steadier than he expected. "We're working on the application, Mr. Abernathy's puzzle." He laid his notebook on the counter, open to the page of sketches and calculations. He explained their findings, the year, the article, the blocked clock tower, and his subsequent reasoning. He wasn't a man asking for a handout. He was a craftsman presenting his work. Eleanor listened without interruption, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of his notes. She saw the careful lettering, the precise lines of his drawings, the logic that connected one clue to the next. Then, her gaze softened as she looked at Maya, who, instead of hiding behind her father's legs, offered a small, shy wave. A slow smile touched Eleanor's lips, transforming her stern features. "Arthur would have liked that," she said softly. "He always said the answer wasn't as important as the dedication to finding it." She didn't offer him another riddle. The hunt, it seemed, was over. She slid a blank sheet of paper and a pen across the counter. "The final step is not a puzzle, Liam. The Abernathy Trust requires a statement of purpose. Arthur believed a home needs more than just walls. It needs a plan. Tell us, what would you do with a new beginning?" Part 3. The foundation. The blank page was more intimidating than any locked door or piece of scaffolding. For 2 days, Liam sat with the pen and paper in a quiet corner of the library, the simple request for a statement of purpose feeling like an insurmountable wall. How could he articulate his need without it sounding like begging? How could he capture the crushing weight of his failure and the fierce, desperate love for his daughter in a few neat paragraphs? His pride, that stubborn, useless companion, whispered that asking for help was the final admission of defeat. He wrote and rewrote, the sentences stiff and formal. I am a skilled tradesman seeking an opportunity to re-establish my career. The words felt hollow, dishonest. He wasn't a tradesman seeking a career. He was a father trying to keep his child from sleeping in a car. He crumpled up another attempt, the sound loud in the library's hush, and buried his face in his hands. He was failing even this. Maya, sitting across from him, had been quietly drawing, her tongue poked out in concentration. She pushed a piece of paper across the table. It wasn't for him, just a drawing she'd finished. On it was a small, crooked house with a lopsided chimney, puffing out a swirl of smoke. Next to it was a bigger, boxy building with a wide-open door, and inside, a stick figure with a hammer stood beside a workbench. Two other figures, a girl with a bright red dress and a smiling woman, stood by the house, holding hands. Liam stared at the drawing, at the simple, profound hope captured in crayon. A home, work, family. That was it. That was everything. He took a fresh sheet of paper. This time, he didn't think about what Eleanor or some faceless trust wanted to hear. He wrote to Arthur. He wrote to Sarah. He wrote to himself. He wrote about the scent of sawdust and the satisfaction of a perfect dovetail joint. He wrote about Maya's laugh and the way she scrunched her nose when she was thinking hard. He wrote about the shame of turning a key on an empty apartment and the bone-deep fear of a cold night in their car. He didn't ask for a house. He asked for a foundation, a place to anchor their lives, a place from which he could build, with his own two hands, a future worthy of his daughter's drawing. He wrote until his knuckles were white and his eyes burned with unshed tears. When he was done, the page was not a plea, but a promise. With the folded statement in his hand, Liam approached Eleanor's office, his heart hammering against his ribs. Maya walked beside him, her small hand tucked confidently in his. Eleanor looked up from her desk as they entered, her expression calm and waiting. Wordlessly, Liam placed the letter on her desk. She didn't read it right away. Instead, her eyes met his, holding his gaze for a long moment. It wasn't a look of pity, but one of profound understanding. Then, she picked up the letter and read. Her face remained impassive, but as she finished, she took off her reading glasses and slowly polished them with a cloth. Arthur always said you could learn more from a man's plans than from his past, she said, her voice softer than Liam had ever heard it. She turned and opened a drawer in a large wooden filing cabinet behind her, pulling out a folder with a single tab on it. Liam could just make out the name. Abernathy Trust. Applicant L. Sullivan. She laid the folder on the desk. The trust was designed to provide a foundation, Liam, not a prize. She opened it, revealing a photograph of a small, charmingly overgrown cottage and a set of legal documents. From a small envelope, she slid a single, old-fashioned iron key across the desk. It came to a stop just before his hand. The trust can provide the house, she said, her voice regaining its professional clarity. It's sound, and the taxes are handled for the first year. But the workshop, she tapped a second photograph, this one of a large, dilapidated barn with peeling paint and a sagging roof. Arthur left his tools, and the structure is solid, but it needs a great deal of work. The opportunity is here. The rest, she looked him straight in the eye, is up to you. Liam stared at the key, a small, stark shape against the polished wood. It wasn't a treasure. It wasn't a solution to all his problems. It was a starting line. He reached out, his fingers closing around the cool metal, and for the first time in a year, felt the solid, reassuring weight of a future. 6 months later, the scent of fresh-cut pine filled the air. The workshop, once a derelict shell, was now a place of purpose. Its roof was patched, its windows were reglazed, and sunlight streamed in, illuminating the dancing dust motes. Liam, leaner and stronger, moved with a confident economy of motion, his plain shaving whisper-thin curls from a plank of oak. He had started small, with repair jobs for neighbors, but word of his skill had spread. Now, he was working on his first big commission, a set of custom bookshelves for the library's new reading room. The cottage was no longer a house, but a home. Warm light spilled from its windows, and the small garden, once choked with weeds, now boasted a row of triumphant-looking sunflowers. The workshop door creaked open, and Maya came in, her face smudged with dirt. She proudly held up her latest creation, a small, wonderfully crooked birdhouse, built from the scraps of wood her father had given her. "I think the Wrens will like it, Daddy. It has a porch." Liam stopped his work, a genuine, tired smile spreading across his face. He knelt and examined the birdhouse with the gravity of a master inspecting an apprentice's work. "It's the finest birdhouse I've ever seen," he declared. From the cottage's porch, Eleanor watched them, a mug of tea warming her hands. She was a regular visitor now, a de facto grandmother. The quiet persistence of hope, she mused, had a sound. It was the rhythmic scrape of a hand playing on wood, the light tap of a child's hammer, and the easy laughter that now filled the space between a father and his daughter. It was the steady, reassuring sound of a life being rebuilt.
Thank you for taking a quiet moment with us. Every story is a journey, and we're so glad you joined us for this one.
We believe stories are a way to connect, even when we're apart. If you felt a connection to this tale, we invite you to subscribe and become part of our growing circle.
Our question for you today is, what's a simple moment of peace you've experienced this week?
Share it in the comments. Let's fill this space with serene moments.
Until the next story, be well.